When the human soldier awoke, the world around him shimmered in alien silver. The air was too still, the floor too smooth, and the silence too heavy to be peace. His wrists were bound by threads of blue light, humming faintly like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. Captain Elias Wren had survived war zones across a dozen planets, but never one like this. He'd been captured during the ceasefire talks, betrayed by the very coordinates meant for peace. The soldiers who'd come with him were gone now, perhaps dead, perhaps prisoners. All he knew was that he was alone, and that the one who commanded this place was watching. The metallic doors before him parted with a whisper, and she entered. The alien queen of Velastra, Queen Arathia. Vena moved like a wave of moonlight and storm. Her skin shimmered in hues of pale violet. Her eyes, two galaxies of silver fire. She was taller than Elias, wrapped in crystalline armor that pulsed with light in rhythm with her heartbeat. But it wasn't her power that made him hold his breath. It was the way she looked at him as if she already knew him deeply, impossibly. Peace, human? Her voice rippled through the air, calm, resonant, and filled with something that sounded too close to sorrow. Elias straightened despite his restraints. That depends on what you call peace. Her lips curved faintly. You came seeking negotiation, yet your armies hide orbital weapons above my sky. Elias didn't flinch. I came because we don't want more blood. Neither side does. She walked closer, each step echoing softly, her long silver braids trailing like threads of light. Then, without warning, she reached out, pressed a glowing hand to his chest, and pinned him against the wall. The energy restraints dissolved, but her power didn't loosen. He could feel her strength, her pulse, her emotion vibrating through him. Yet behind the power there was restraint. You humans, she whispered. You burn worlds to call it peace. He met her gaze steadily. Maybe, but we also rebuild them. That's what we came for. A flicker crossed her face, something unreadable. She studied him as if peeling through every word, every heartbeat. Then she stepped back, letting him breathe again. Your courage is inconvenient, she said softly. Most who meet me cannot even stand. Elias rubbed his wrist, his tone steady but curious. Is that supposed to be a compliment? It's a warning. She turned away, looking through the translucent walls toward her empire, gleaming cities suspended in light. Our kind has ruled this quadrant for 10,000 years, but the wars with humanity have changed the stars themselves. Elias followed her gaze. Then maybe it's time we stop trying to own them. That made her glance back sharply. The faintest smile ghosted her lips. You speak as if peace is easy. I speak as if it's worth dying for. Silence. Only the low hum of alien energy filled the hall. Then slowly Arathia walked toward him again. But this time her voice was softer, her eyes less guarded. You think your kind can forgive what we've done? She asked quietly. Maybe not forgive, Elias said, but we can choose not to repeat it. Something inside her shifted, visible like a storm calming over still waters. She stepped closer, just enough for him to see the trembling light in her eyes. Perhaps, she murmured, peace needs more than words. Her hand reached out once more, but this time not to restrain him. She pressed it gently to his heart. The touch was cool, electric, almost tender. And then, with a tone that made even the silence hold its breath, she said, Then hear me, human. To end this war, I offer you something my empire has never given before. Elias swallowed, sensing the air shift with something monumental. What's that? Arathia's lips curved, slow, deliberate. Marriage. For a long suspended moment, Elias couldn't find words. Marriage? The word itself echoed strangely in the alien chamber, like a fragile melody caught between two storms. Queen Arathia stood before him, radiant yet unreadable, her gaze steady as light on steel. You heard me correctly, human, she said at last, her tone neither jest nor cruelty. A union. Between your kind and mine. Between you and me. Elias exhaled slowly, searching her eyes for a trace of irony, of manipulation, but found none. Only something deeper. Something dangerous. Is this your idea of peace? He asked quietly. Her expression softened, almost weary. It is the only one left. She turned toward the massive window where the horizon shimmered with rivers of blue light, her empire's lifeblood. Both sides are breaking, Elias. My fleets crumble. Your colonies burn. Every treaty collapses within a week. We have lost more than soldiers. We've lost trust itself. Her voice wavered slightly at the edge of sorrow, so I thought. Perhaps peace cannot be written in ink, or sealed with signatures. Perhaps it must be bound in something stronger, something living. Elias hesitated, watching the way her hand trembled slightly as it touched the glass. For the first time, she didn't look like a queen. She looked like someone exhausted by centuries of pride. You think marrying a human will fix that? I think, she said, turning back toward him, that it will begin to heal what pride has broken. Her eyes locked with his, and the air between them thickened with the gravity of something that could change galaxies. Elias laughed once, dry, incredulous. Your people would never accept it. Nor would yours, she replied, the faintest hint of a smile touching her lips. That is why it must be us who begin it. For a moment, neither spoke. Only the distant hum of the palace resonated, carrying the pulse of a civilization that waited unknowingly on the edge of history. Elias finally said, his voice low, "You don't even know me. I know enough. Then tell me, what do you think you know?" She stepped closer, her silver eyes glimmering like the surface of water under moonlight. That you are the only human who didn't flinch when I touched you. That you spoke truth even when your life hung in my hands. That you hate war, yet you fight so others don't have to. And that somehow, her voice faltered softer now, you remind me what it means to feel hope again. The words struck something in him he hadn't realized was fragile. For years, Elias had seen the worst of both sides. The ashes of surrender. The faces of children born under red suns who never knew peace. But hearing her say those words, it felt different. It felt like the universe had gone quiet to listen. Still, he shook his head. You're risking everything on one man. Not one man, Arathia said. One choice. Her hand extended once more, open, waiting. The faint light of her palm shimmered like the reflection of distant stars. Join me, Elias Wren. Not as prisoner, not as enemy, as equal. The weight of her offer pressed on him like gravity. He could already imagine the chaos if he accepted. The outrage, the disbelief, the danger. But behind that danger, something else glowed. Possibility. Your counsel will never allow it, he murmured. Her lips curved with a quiet defiance. My counsel serves me, and I serve what the universe needs. He looked at her hand again, glowing faintly in the silence. The same hand that had pinned him to the wall now offered peace, not through treaty or surrender, but through trust. And in that moment, Elias realized something. The war had never been about armies. It had always been about fear. Maybe, just maybe, she was right. He took a slow step forward. If I say yes, he began. Arathia's gaze met his, steady and bright. Then peace begins with us. The words hung between them, fragile, yet eternal. Outside through the crystal windows, the alien stars shimmered brighter, as if the universe itself leaned closer to witness what might be its first true miracle. The following morning, the palace of Velora, the queen's fortress suspended above the luminous clouds of Velastra, stirred with unease. Word had spread like wildfire through crystal corridors. The queen had proposed to a human. Elias felt the weight of those whispers even before he opened his eyes. The chamber he had been given overlooked the endless sea of glowing cities below, each one a beacon of her people's pride. Yet now that pride trembled. He stood by the window dressed in the ceremonial garment Arathia's attendants had left him, woven threads of dark blue silk lined with faint silver veins. It was beautiful, alien, and felt utterly foreign on him. The door slid open with a chime. Arathia entered quietly, no longer armored but draped in soft robes of translucent white. Without her regalia, she looked almost human, almost fragile. You slept? She asked, her tone light but cautious. He turned to face her. Barely. I could hear your people outside my door. She gave a small, tired smile. Velastran voices carry far when they are angry. So they know. They always know. Elias crossed his arms. And what do they say? That I've lost my mind, she replied, her silver eyes meeting his without flinching. That the queen who conquered 12 worlds now kneels before a human. Elias's jaw tensed. Then maybe this isn't the kind of peace your people will accept. But she shook her head, a trace of quiet conviction in her voice. True peace has never needed permission. The words hung between them, simple yet impossibly brave. Before he could respond, the chamber door opened again. A tall Velestran general entered, armored in violet steel and shadow. His expression was carved in disdain. "Your Majesty," the general said, bowing stiffly, "you summoned the Council of Unity, yet rumors speak louder than decree. Tell me it is not true." "It is," Arathia replied calmly. The general's eyes narrowed, glinting with shock and fury. "You mean to bind yourself to a human? One of the species that burned our outer colonies?" Elias stepped forward, his tone cool. "And you burned ours." The general's gaze turned venomous. "Your tongue is sharp for a prisoner." "Enough," Arathia commanded, her voice a steel-edged melody. "He is no prisoner." The general's eyes widened. "Then what is he?" Arathia's answer was clear and unshaken. "My chosen." The silence that followed could have shattered mountains. The general's fists tightened. "Then the council will reject your rule." "Then they will learn what rule means," she said softly. "And what courage requires." The general hesitated, his pride battling his fear. Finally he bowed once more, muttering words Elias didn't understand, and left. The doors sealed behind him with a low thrum. When they were alone again, Elias turned toward her. "You're risking everything, your crown, your people, because of one decision." Arathia looked past him to the horizon where twin suns rose through mist. "Every empire falls, Elias. The question is whether it falls for greed or for hope." Her gaze drifted back to him, soft but fierce. "I choose hope." Elias stared at her, struggling between admiration and disbelief. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met," he said quietly, "or the most reckless. Perhaps both." A faint laugh escaped him before he could stop it. For a moment the tension eased, but just as quickly her expression shifted, thoughtful, almost troubled. "There is one more truth you must know," she said, her tone hushed. "My proposal? It was not only political. There are forces in my court, those who seek to end the war not through peace but through extinction." "Assassins?" Elias guessed. She nodded slowly. "If you accept me, you must stand with me." "And that means they will come for you first," Elias exhaled. "So you're telling me peace begins with a target on my back?" Arathia's lips curved faintly. "Peace has never been safe, Captain Wren." He met her gaze, saw the resolve flicker like silver flame in her eyes. Somewhere deep inside, something answered that fire. "Then I'll stand with you," he said at last. "For peace. For hope." And when he spoke those words, the room seemed to breathe again. The glass walls glowing brighter. The silence filling with promise. For the first time since the war began, the Queen of Velastra smiled not as a ruler, but as a woman who finally believed peace was possible. The great hall of unity shimmered with light as the Queen's council gathered. Dozens of alien lords, clad in metallic robes that reflected every hue of the dawn, stood beneath the vaulted crystal arches, whispering like restless storms. Their faces were calm masks, but their eyes burned with disbelief. At the far end of the hall, Queen Arathia stood tall, her composure flawless. To her right, in ceremonial blue, stood Captain Elias Wren, the lone human among a sea of Velastran authority. The air between them was tense, alive with silent judgment. "This assembly," began the elder chancellor, his voice cold and resonant, "was meant to discuss the terms of peace. Instead, our queen brings us a spectacle, a declaration that defies 1,000 years of rule." Arathia's eyes narrowed slightly. "You may call it spectacle, Chancellor. I call it survival." "Survival?" the Chancellor scoffed. "You propose binding our sacred lineage to a human, one who carries the blood of war?" Elias spoke before she could. "War has stained us both. But maybe that's why we can end it." Gasps rippled through the council. A human speaking in their sacred hall was an insult by their law, yet Arathia didn't stop him. She let his words echo. The Chancellor sneered. "Your tongue is bold, human. But peace is not forged through weakness." Elias met his gaze. "No, it's forged through courage. The kind your queen has." The chamber filled with murmurs again, some scandalized, others quietly intrigued. Arathia raised her hand and the hall fell silent. "You speak of weakness," she said, her voice calm but sharp. "But weakness is what we become when fear dictates our choices. We have ruled by dominance long enough. Now we must learn to rule by trust." The Chancellor's tone turned venomous. "Trust the species that destroyed our colonies? That burned our sons alive on Astra 9? Arathia's voice trembled slightly, but she held firm. "And how many human cities did we burn in return? Do you think I forget the children who screamed when our fleets fell upon them?" The silence that followed was deep, suffocating. Even the lights dimmed as if to mourn the truth. For the first time, the Queen of Velastra looked not like a ruler, but like a being haunted by the cost of her own throne. The Chancellor's expression shifted, uncertain, unsettled, but before he could speak again, a flicker of movement caught Elias's eye. From the balcony above, a faint shimmer, too fast, too subtle for most to see. Arathia, Elias shouted, lunging forward. The beam of plasma struck the floor where the Queen had been standing an instant before, shattering the crystal tiles in a brilliant explosion of light. Chaos erupted. Guards rushed forward, the council scattered, and a second shot seared through the air. Elias grabbed Arathia by the arm and pulled her behind a pillar, just as the next bolt struck where her heart would have been. When the smoke cleared, the assassin was gone, only the faint glimmer of a cloaking field flickering in the distance. Elias released her slowly, his breath ragged. Guess I was right about having a target. Arathia looked at him, her eyes wide, not with fear, but something else. You moved before I could sense it. He gave a small shrug. Old instincts. She stared at him for a long moment, then whispered, "You saved me." He smiled faintly. "You're welcome, Your Majesty." She laughed softly, though her voice trembled. "I've led fleets across galaxies, faced entire armies, and it takes a single human to remind me I'm not invincible." Then more seriously, this was no rogue attack. Someone in the council gave the order. Elias's jaw tightened. "Then your own people are turning against you." "They already have," she said quietly. "But I will not yield." He studied her face, the flicker of defiance beneath the exhaustion, the fire beneath the grace. And something stirred in him, a fierce protective pull he hadn't felt in years. "Then we fight together," he said. She looked up at him, silver eyes shimmering with emotion. "You would stand against an empire for me?" "For peace," he said softly. "And maybe, for you." Her gaze lingered on his, unblinking, the distance between them charged with unspoken words. In that silent exchange, amid the smoke and broken glass of betrayal, something more powerful than politics began to take shape. Not alliance. Not strategy. Something deeper, something neither of them could name yet. The corridors of the palace burned with tension. Velestron guards, tall, silver-armored beings, stood double watch at every turn. The attack in the council hall had sent shockwaves through the empire. Rumors spread faster than light. The Queen was betrayed. The human had saved her life. And deep within the heart of the palace, behind sealed crystalline doors, Queen Arathia Vena stood beside Elias Wren, staring at the holographic map of the stars. It pulsed with the glow of war, burning zones, rebel fleets, and unstable colonies. "The assassin's trail ends here," Elias said, tracing the map's flickering red line. "Outer moon of Valora. Whoever's behind this, your own general perhaps, they're hiding there." Arathia's expression hardened. "General Kalor," she said bitterly. "He has always despised the idea of peace." Elias nodded. "Then he'll strike again. You need to get ahead of him." She turned toward him slowly. "We need to get ahead of him." He frowned. "You're not going after him yourself." She stepped closer, her silver eyes glowing faintly. "I am the Queen of Velastra. I cannot hide while others fight for me." "Then you'll be walking into his trap," he said firmly. "And yet," she countered, her voice calm, "you would walk into it too." Elias stared at her, unable to deny it. She was right. There was something magnetic about her defiance, something in her courage that pulled him forward no matter how impossible the odds. "You're reckless," he muttered. Arathia smiled faintly. "And you're predictable." For a moment silence filled the room. Then she stepped closer again, closer than before. So close he could see the faint pulse of biolight under her skin, the soft rise and fall of her breath. "When I first saw you," she said quietly, "I thought you were a symbol of everything I despised, human arrogance, conquest, chaos." Her voice softened. "But now I see something else." Elias swallowed, his chest tightening. "What do you see?" "Someone who reminds me what it means to believe." Her words hung between them, unarmored, dangerous, utterly sincere. He took a slow breath. "You're risking everything for a peace that might never come. And you still stand beside me," she whispered. "Why?" He hesitated, his voice low and steady. "Because I think, maybe you're the first ruler I've met who doesn't want to win. You want to heal." Her expression softened. She reached out, brushing her fingers against his wrist. The touch was faint, electric, alien yet heartbreakingly gentle. "In my world," she said, "touch is sacred. We share it only with those we trust completely." "Then why share it with me?" he asked quietly. "Because when you saved me, I felt something I had not felt in centuries, fear. Not of death, but of losing what I had just found." He met her gaze. Two worlds reflected in her silver eyes. "And what's that?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "A reason to hope again." For a moment, neither of them moved. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The stars outside flickered softly against the glass walls, as if listening to something ancient being rewritten. Then the alarm broke the silence, sharp, urgent, echoing through the palace. "Proximity alert!" A guard's voice shouted through the intercom. "Unidentified fleet emerging from warp. 12 ships bearing General Kalor's mark." Arathia's eyes widened. "He's attacking the capital." Elias grabbed his weapon from the table, sliding a cartridge into place. Then the trap wasn't waiting. "It's already sprung." She turned to him, her composure returning, regal but fierce. "We will defend the heart of Velastra together." He nodded. Side by side. As they rushed from the chamber, the halls shook with the rumble of distant impact. Outside, through the transparent domes, streaks of plasma cut across the sky like falling stars. And amidst the chaos, Elias glanced at her, the warrior queen with fire in her eyes and peace in her heart, and thought, maybe humanity's greatest victory won't be in battle, but in standing beside someone like her. And in that moment, amid the rising storm, he finally understood something profound. Peace wasn't a treaty. It was a choice made in the fire. The skies above Velastra ignited. Fire rained from orbit as General Kalor's warships pierced the atmosphere, their black hulls gleaming with crimson energy. The capital's defense shields flared under the bombardment, veins of light splitting across the domes like cracks in glass. Inside the palace, Queen Arathia Vena strode through the trembling corridors with Elias Wren at her side. Alarms wailed, lights flickered, and the deep hum of the defense grid vibrated beneath their feet. "Command center, this way," she ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. Elias followed, gripping his pulse rifle, adrenaline roaring in his veins. Every step echoed with urgency, every explosion outside a reminder of how close the Empire was to collapsing. When they reached the control deck, the view took Elias's breath away. The vast window revealed the once pristine skies of Velastra now choked with flame and metal. Her people's fleets were scattering, some defending, others hesitating, torn between loyalty and rebellion. "Your forces aren't responding in formation," Elias said. "They're divided." Arathia's jaw tightened. "Kalor has split their command links. He's forcing them to choose between him and me. Then we make them choose right." Her gaze flicked toward him, a spark of resolve reigniting in her silver eyes. "Then we fight." She raised her arm, activating a translucent control console. Her voice rang through every fleet channel in orbit, clear, fierce, unyielding. "This is your queen. I stand not as ruler, but as one of you. The war has taken enough. If you follow Kalor, then you follow the ghost of everything we once were. But if you stand with me, then you stand for the future that might still be ours." Her words carried like a pulse across the network, resonating in the heart of every Velastran ship. Elias could almost feel the tide turning, the hesitation melting into conviction. Outside, half the fleet broke from Kalor's formation and turned, joining the Queen's side. The skies roared with new light as Allied ships reactivated their shields. Kalor's voice cut through the channel, dripping venom. "You betray your own bloodline for a human? You disgrace our stars." Arathia's eyes flared. "I honor them by ending the cycle you began." Kalor's fleet opened fire. The palace shook violently, throwing Elias off balance. He grabbed a console to steady himself. "Shields at 40%, cried one of the attendants. "Divert auxiliary power," Arathia commanded. "Protect the lower city." But another explosion ripped through the air, the impact throwing shards of crystal across the floor. Elias lunged, shielding Arathia as debris rained around them. When the dust cleared, he was bleeding from his arm, but still standing. "You're hurt," she said, reaching for him. "Just a scratch," he grinned, though his voice was tight with pain. "I've had worse." Her fingers brushed his cheek, gentle, glowing faintly with healing energy. "You risk your life too easily." He met her gaze, steady. "So do you." Their eyes locked, two souls standing between destruction and destiny. and for the first time neither of them felt alone. Suddenly a tremor rippled through the floor, a massive energy surge. The console flared red. Kaelor's flagship, an officer shouted. It's charging its core cannon, directed at the palace. Elias's heart pounded. That shot will vaporize half the capital. Arathia slammed her hand on the controls. Then we take it out first, he shook his head. You'll never reach it in time. She looked at him, then at the window where the flagship's colossal form loomed in the sky like a shadow blotting out the sun. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Unless we take the fight to him? You mean go up there? Her lips curved faintly. Together. Before he could protest, she pressed her palm to the air, an energy pattern expanding outward, forming a sphere of radiant light around them both. Hold on, she said softly. The world dissolved into brilliance. In an instant, they were gone from the palace, drawn through a spiral of white energy, reappearing amid the chaos of orbit. Outside, thousands of ships blazed across the void, and before them, enormous and terrible, loomed Kaelor's flagship. Elias gripped his weapon tighter, heart pounding, and glanced at her. Guess this is what you meant by fighting for peace. Her silver eyes met his, fierce and calm. No, Elias, this is what I mean by protecting it. As the flagship's cannons began to glow, they flew straight toward the heart of the storm, two figures bound by courage, defiance, and something that already felt greater than destiny. The void roared around them. Explosions shimmered like dying stars, and the flagship of General Kaelor loomed ahead, an enormous citadel of shadow and fire. Plasma arcs flared across its hull as Arathia and Elias materialized upon its upper deck, the energy of her teleportation sphere fading into silver mist. The moment their boots struck metal, alarms screamed. Armored guards poured from the corridors, their weapons glinting red. Stay behind me, Arathia said, summoning her energy blade, a curved beam of violet light that hummed with ancient power. Elias smirked, despite the danger. You really think I came all this way to hide? Before she could respond, he charged forward, moving with the raw precision of a trained soldier. His pulse rifle sang through the smoke, cutting through the air beside her blade's luminous arcs. For a brief, terrible moment, human grit and alien grace fought side by side, two rhythms in perfect harmony. When the last guard fell, the silence that followed was deafening. Arathia turned to him. You fight with chaos, she murmured, half in awe, half in disbelief. And you fight like a storm, he said, breathing hard. We make a good mess. A faint, breathless smile touched her lips, but it faded as the deck shuddered beneath them. The flagship's inner reactor growled with power, its energy rising to critical. Kaelor was preparing to fire the main cannon straight toward the planet. This way, Arathia said, sprinting toward the command core. They reached the vast control chamber, a cathedral of glass and metal alive with crimson light. And there, waiting beside the control throne, was General Kaelor himself. Tall, armored in obsidian scales, his eyes burned with betrayal. You bring a human into our sanctum, he snarled. You disgrace every ancestor that built this empire. Arathia's voice was steady. They built it on blood. I will rebuild it on mercy. Kaelor's sneer deepened. Mercy is the language of the weak. Then I am proud to speak it. With a roar, Kaelor lunged. His energy halberd met her blade with a thunderous clash, light exploding between them. Sparks danced across the chamber as they fought. Queen against general, faith against fury. Elias moved fast, ducking through the chaos to the control panel. He saw the cannon's countdown ticking down, 40 seconds to fire. Arathia! He shouted. It's locked on the capital! She barely turned, locked in combat. Shut it down. I'm trying. Elias hammered at the controls, but Kaelor's voice boomed through the speakers. You think I'd make it that easy? It will fire and your peace will burn with it. Elias's heart raced. There was no manual override unless... He spotted the reactor feed conduit beneath the panel. If he rerouted the plasma surge manually, he could overload the weapon's chamber, destroying the cannon before it fired. But it would mean staying there when it exploded. He looked up, saw Arathia stumble as Kaelor's halberd slashed across her shoulder, her light dimming. Something inside him snapped. He ran forward, tackling Kaelor with all his weight. The two crashed into the edge of the platform, fighting hand to hand. Kaelor's strength was monstrous, but Elias fought like a man who'd already decided he wouldn't lose. With a final, brutal effort, Elias grabbed the halberd's power cell and jammed it into the reactor feed. The explosion of energy hurled Kalor backward, straight into the core's blinding light. The general screamed once and vanished in a storm of fire. The cannon's charge began to collapse. The core turned unstable, flashing between crimson and white. "Elias," Arathia cried, rushing to him. "You have to leave now." He shook his head, breath ragged. "It's going to blow. Someone has to hold the override." "No!" She reached for him, tears burning in her silver eyes. "We leave together." He smiled faintly. "You gave your people peace. Don't lose it now." She gripped his hand desperately, the glow of her skin trembling with emotion. "I can't." He leaned closer, his voice breaking. "You can, you must. For both of us." And before she could protest, he pressed his palm against hers, triggering her teleportation matrix. A surge of white light swallowed her cry as she was torn away from him, vanishing into the stars. Moments later, the flagship erupted. A silent bloom of brilliance rippled through orbit, scattering debris like ashes across the void. Down on Velastra, the people looked up and saw a new star being born. Arathia stood at the palace balcony, her face wet with tears and starlight. Her world was safe. Her people were free, but the one who made it possible was gone, woven into the very light that now bathed her planet. Days later, when the peace accords were signed, she stood before her council, tall, composed, radiant. Her voice did not tremble when she spoke. "The human you once called enemy taught us what peace truly means. Not surrender, not conquest, but the courage to love what you once feared." And as the twin suns rose beyond the horizon, their light fell on a small insignia she wore upon her wrist, an old human captain's emblem, polished silver against violet skin. She whispered softly so only the stars could hear, "Rest well, Elias Wren, your peace endures." And across the skies of Velastra, the dawn broke bright and endless, proof that even the smallest act of humanity could change the course of galaxies forever.